Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are on another Tuesday where I welcome you to join in me, Mary May, for another cup of coffee. Here is my coffee. I hope that you are well. As you can see and experience, I guess, there's some voices in the background. I am in a different location this week. I'm speaking at a conference here in St. Thomas. Um, and I wanted to still make sure that we have our morning cup of coffee and we have our moment on our building our nuggets, because before we make any decision, we have to have a cup of coffee or tea. So um, today we will jump into the focus nugget of our conversation while I am over here in the Caribbean. Good morning. Good morning. Our focus conversation is vulnerability versus transparency. Do you know the difference and the impact for you in the workplace? Um, when I came across this conversation and this topic, I was like, this is really a space that we kind of get into a bottleneck or like various challenges around being vulnerable and being transparent, and we end up falling into various situations, say more so in the workplace but also in your personal relationships as well, where you may be demonstrating undesirable characteristics and being more vulnerable and transparent than your role really requires. And so I want to take some time this morning in our morning cup of coffee and kind of unpack what that how that impacts you on not only your workflow and your productivity, but also in your ability when you're trying to level up and we're trying to, kind of break that. Good morning. When you're trying to break that glass ceiling or be able to establish yourself with the relationships that are will benefit you while you are, you know, doing all of the different tasks, being a team leader, being the supervisor, director, whomever. Sometimes certain conversations that could be deemed as casual can be impacting your ability, because whereas you did have honest inventory in the conversation with integrity. However, you missed the mark in what it was, or when you were supposed to stop, or when you were, when you overshared, if you will, that now has given a post-it note to your leadership team to kind of look at you a little bit differently. So just before we dive in, I want to just share, if it's case is anybody new watching us live or on the replay. I am a leadership strategist, and I have effectively worked with women over the past 15 years and guiding them to being navigated, not being passed over, looked over in the workplace, so that they can reach the optimal role that they would desire in their career, that also balances out how it is that they live and exist in their personal lives while getting promoted and well paid. So, I mean, who doesn't want to be able to have the balance of work life um and harmony, that you're able to accelerate, you're able to do what it is that you need to do, but then also be able to execute in this space unapologetically, but yes, using healthy boundaries, but being very crystal clear on the boundaries that you are consistent, because there are some situations in the workplace that challenge us in a way where we're not realizing how it is that our conversations that we think are casual, our conversations that we understand being compassion or someone demonstrating concern to try to support us, how that goes into our portfolio, and in our portfolio, post-it note, performance review, whatever, how that shows up again in our in that conversation. And then when we're putting our bid into being promoted, as well as well paid, the challenges come in where we have had these different layered levels of conversation, and we haven't taken that personal inventory to kind of know how we have talked ourselves out of possibly what it is that we're trying to work up to. And so when you're having these natural conversations, and the natural conversations are, challenging you in different positions, you have to be sure that you always have that personal and honest inventory and reflection, knowing your purpose and knowing your intention around what it is that you share, the reasons why you're sharing it, and what opportunity is it going to, you know, make you jump into, or prepare you for being leveled up, or prepare you for the opportunity to be able to just exceed and excel, like in abundance. Again, what you do at work is not compartmentalized and separate from how it is that you show up in your personal relationships. However, we are speaking about you having the ability to kind of position yourself, and not kind of positioning yourself, so that in every conversation you realize that even though you are on the job, in the job, leading and preparing others to kind of level up and do what it is for each particular project, that you are being extremely mindful around the content that you share. So it's like, are you being transparent or vulnerable? And dare I say, too much? Which is like the bandwidth of recognizing if you're being transparent, or if you're being, vulnerable, if it is appropriate or not appropriate, is always the gauge that you would have to be mindful of. And in the workplace, especially now as people are going back into the office, but before we had, the experience of being kind of, virtual all over, we had what we considered good friends at work. We had what we considered, I guess, safe spaces in the workplace. And those things are recreating, but we're sharing various experiences that maybe should not be shared in the actual workplace. And the reason I would, challenge you or encourage you to think about what's being shared in the workplace is because you may be doing big thinking, problem solving situations. And sometimes the way that you are in that big picture trying to solve a situation, you may be directing yourself away from the promotion by the way that you interact, by the way that you react, by the way that you respond or understand people's information. One of the examples that I wanted to share is that I want to define vulnerable and transparency before I go into a story. So, vulnerability is defined by the quality or the state of being exposed to the possibility of being or feeling like attacked and harmed. And this could be done either physically or emotionally. And so when you think about, it being physically or emotionally, that means, how are you internalizing it? How are you understanding it? And what is it that would benefit you from being able to kind of shift the gears and have like a 2 millimeter stretch where you look at where your quality of being exposed, actually happens? Because typically when the exposure, or we're feeling attacked emotionally or physically, it comes from data that has been collected from various conversations or various productivity challenges in our workspace that now is being utilized to qualify your ability to successfully implement and execute what's necessary in the workplace. So when you look at vulnerability, there's 4 different types. And so the 4 different types could be physical, it could be economic, it could be social, and it could also be environmental. And so when you look at good morning, when you look at what that capacity really looks like, those 4 types of being vulnerable end up, redirecting some of the conversations. Now, of course, if you've been listening to me for a while, I'm always talking about how to not have yourself in handcuffs and how we're going to break the handcuffs and how we're going to next level our career. But now, getting into these morning cup of coffees on Tuesday morning, we're peeling back the layers of what some of those things that we have placed ourselves in the handcuff situations or limiting beliefs. And our workflow and our productivity has been challenged by these various types of when we have felt vulnerable. So I wanted to give some examples, and I did take some notes in regards to like the four different types. So like the four different types of vulnerability. So being vulnerable is looking at your losses, like the different type of losses that you truly experience. And when you think about what it is that you truly experience from being vulnerable, it could be a fatality, it could be an injury, it could be loss of income or employment, and how you react and respond to that. Um, as well as indirect, it could be like a permanent disability from an accident. It could be a psychological impact because you're overthinking, you're second guessing, and looking at all the ways that you could have done something different. However, you still remain in that particular space. And so the disruption in the community and like political unrest, that's like just the basic vulnerable vulnerable losses. So then when you look at physical, it's like structural damage or physical damage to say like a building. So the indirect is that you may know that you need a roof done, but you're like, okay, I'm going to take some time to do that because I need a different way of preparing for the investment. However, that infrastructure is not stable and you're continuing to, kind of be in that space. So that would be like a physical vulnerability, something that needs to be taken care of, needs to be managed, but you want to strategically be able to approach it in a certain way. And then the economic is the interruption of business or interruption of your leadership, interruption of your job, like loss of protect of the workforce, like we're experiencing throughout the world, where the capacity or the convenience to us, where individuals were able to, like, we were able to go to a restaurant way after 9 o'clock and it was okay. However, these days, even while I'm in travel, you can't really find anything to eat after 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening because from capacity standpoint, the staff have to go home, or they work the hours that legally is available, and so there's an interruption in the workforce. And then the indirect of an economic could be like it's a short-term disruption, but because it's a disruption in and of itself, we react, we begin to talk about like different situations, and everyone in the workforce cannot necessarily connect to what it is that has meaning for you. So it's like looking at all the ways in which you're vulnerable, but also looking at the challenges. And so the last thing would be cultural. Now, cultural can be very, very broad. And it's like a broad stroke when you use that word in understanding and context, because it could be pollution or it could be like an endangered like situation of your culture and your heritage. But the indirect is like the loss of like the diversity, and diversity or cultural diversity right now is like such a buzzword, but things become vulnerable, and things you think are safe, you end up framing it in casual conversations, end up impacting your ability to kind of show up in the workspace in the way that you want to. So then looking at transparency, like on the other side, transparency is defined by the lack of hidden agendas. Like there's no secret in regards to the intention or the things that we're going, like to talk about, or, having availability of all of the information necessary for the project, like the pros, the cons, the barriers, the blind spots, whatever it is, you have full access to ensuring that what you need is available. So being honest and open. But the thing about transparency is that when you're doing that, you may not say anything from a deficient standpoint, but from an awareness standpoint that would allow you to position yourself around required collaboration, cooperation, and collective decision making. Because that ability to do that collective decision making is how you would be able to demonstrate your success in all of the different situations. So when I think about like this conversation around um transparency and vulnerability and what is the impact for your day-to-day work experience, and I gave the example a moment ago um in regards to people in the workplace. You think that you're in supervision, you're asking for resources, or there seems as if there's a level of compassion, so you begin to trust the space to kind of talk through what some of the challenges are that could be personal and also could be like within the work. The way to reframe these situations is to be mindful of what it is that you're sharing. Like, you don't necessarily want to have a hidden agenda, but the hidden agenda comes in play when you are possibly sharing the challenges that you're having doing a certain project, and you're presenting it from a challenging standpoint. So presenting it from a challenging standpoint and saying, this is difficult, I can't, gives the layering of the note taking that they're going to place in your portfolio, that you're incompetent, you're not capable, and you're not positioning yourself to win. How you will position yourself to win is being clear on what it is that your ask is, and being open to understand that your ask is important and is relevant. Is not competition, but position, like reframe how it is that you say something is difficult. So when you reframe how things may be difficult, you would be clear in sharing that um for this particular project, it appears that I'm going to need some additional resources. Remember that transparency or that clarity on what resources that you needed. So, like, I'm going to need some additional resources in order for this to be successful. What is available for me? Normally, we go from the deficient standpoint and have conversations about it where we're overthinking it because we're already big thinkers. So, in being a big thinker, we have to be mindful of how we end up talking ourselves out of the promotion and being well paid by just casual conversation. And a simple shift of your words help you to understand that maybe if you have too many words, then possibly you are becoming more vulnerable than necessary. But kind of have that cry, do that in the car, but by the time you get into the meeting or the conference room, have yourself prepared in such a way that your clarity is very crystal clear, your ask is crystal clear. But what it takes to do that may be some breathing room from what was challenging you, but then a 2 millimeter shift that takes work, that takes guidance, that takes support for you to consistently be able to lead from the front lines instead of from behind the curtain, or lead from the front lines and understand that you have a unique way of thinking, a unique footprint on how it is that this program and things can get done. But then it's like you're not like second guessing yourself, you're not questioning, you're not in the story that I was thinking of is that in times before I knew this and was able to implement the strategies that I would like to share with you on a one-on-one basis, is I would assume that when the person is asking me, okay, what is going on, or how can we assist you, depending on what level of emotionality that I was in, I might go into the office and was possibly crying or upset or complaining about various variables that I really had no control over, or the person that I spoke with really had no need for being aware of that particular challenge. And so what would happen is I would have those meetings. I would think that it was a trusted space, and thinking that it was a trusted space, I became overly vulnerable because I end up opening myself up to criticism that had nothing to do with the role at hand, with the task at hand, because my guard was let down. And in the consequence of that was I was contracting for another company, and they not only in the building that I was working in and contracting and developing their program, I now had to speak to the person who wrote the contract that I was the consultant for, and begin to peel back all the things that I had shared. So to come from the conversation within the building to go to the place where I was contracting, and for them to know every tab and tidbit that of the conversation that I had shared, positioned me negatively, positioned me to share, to make it appear that I had limited capabilities to continue the project and continue the behavior modification program that was being developed. And that was really far from the case. But yes, life was happening. And so therefore I needed to negotiate differently. However, the impact of that comes into the characteristics of the economic vulnerability as well as the personal vulnerability of oversharing, framing information from how I felt. I was caught up in my Jasmine Sullivan feelings. So being caught up in my Jasmine Sullivan feelings, the possibilities around what that looked like became very, very difficult and very, very challenging. And end up being that the contract, I had to be transferred to another location because the understanding of what I had talked about or had concerns about end up being the conflict for me to be in that building and in that space. So this, I share that personal story with you, but on the other side of it, I've worked with several other women in leadership who have experienced the same thing, where it's like, they come in, they're talking about what has been the challenges in the workspace. And because we're human first, we're emotional beings second, and we're always striving to perform and do exactly what it is that we need to do unapologetically and safely. So, like, the reason you may feel that you're being overlooked and not well paid or like passed over when it comes to earning and identifying with a promotion that you feel that you have already earned, you have to kind of have some honest inventory and look at what is the thread of the conversations, or how did I show up in my footprint of the space that I do well with excellence, and did I end up changing the negotiation foundation through another conversation or through another action or through an inaction? Because sometimes the way that we end up responding to situations is inaction, and we end up being in competition with ourselves. So it falls under like the hashtag that I generally prescribe to and talk about, the daily divorce of self. But it's like, how are you mindful of how it is that you work through various situations, and looking at how you can remain in your purpose, remain in your desired ambition, and be able to go into that conference room unapologetically with the confidence and consistently deliver, as well as get the benefit that you're looking for. And the benefit being that you're looking for is, sometimes acknowledgement and acknowledgement and support, but then also looking at the opportunities that on getting the invoice paid for, and getting the project extended, and getting like a referral for another project to do the same thing, or whatever it is that you are doing and you're leveling up, you have to be sure that how you frame the situations do not lock you in to being too vulnerable or overthinking, where you end up talking yourself out of what that situation truly truly looks like. And so when it looks at what the impact is, the impact of your workflow, your intensity, your ability to like do the job, there should be no complaints when it comes to talking to anybody within the workforce, because you never know who talks to who or how your name will show up in a room. And you always want your name to show up in a space where you qualify, you overqualify, you already have the skills, you already have the education that you need to get the promotion and to be able to successfully like move up the ladder the way that you choose to move. But sometimes, because again, we're human and emotional beings, we have to begin to separate and ensure that we're not oversharing when it comes to being vulnerable and transparent, that we are mindful of how it is that it is important for us when we're moving to like different levels, and understanding that everybody that is at your ambition level, they may not be at your ambition level and higher, they may be at your ambition level and just there, like they can't see the framework of moving up and playing in a larger space. So you are effectively the leader, you are the giant in your space. You need to show up that way. And in order to show up that way, you have to be able to hold yourself in that honest inventory of when you're having these conversations that seem casual, that you're not necessarily, good morning, that you're not necessarily, putting yourself in a position or in a placement zone in your portfolio that's showing that you're ineffective and not capable. So you being mindful of, what it is that you're saying, doing, and delivering in every conversation, in every action, in everything in regards to how you manage time, how it is that you work and function moving forward. So I've shared a lot of different nuggets throughout this 25 minutes that we've had together in this morning cup of coffee with Mary May. My location is definitely different this week, but I did not want to miss a week of pouring into you as you are working and identifying like how it is that you can level up in your work as a leader, and being able to understand the power of you just being, the leader that you want to be, but not allowing the vulnerabilities and transparencies to be the barrier that says, okay, when they go through and they put all of the names on the table of who qualifies, you don't want any conversation that you have had to come up and they say, well, they would have been qualified, but, or they had the qualifications, but remember on this particular project, they did this, that, and the other. It's a certain skill set to be able to understand what it is that is necessary that you would need to do, but it is a certain skill set to understand and be able to operate and activate on a consistent basis. That again, in working, if you choose to at least have the exploratory conversation, to have the breakthrough, to become aware of what those blind spots and barriers are for you, and that you consistently seem to experience and feeling passed over and not getting the well-paid promotion that you would like those are the things that is within my GPS format that I provide and help people level up, because it's not necessarily just a format. The format is the guide. It's what comes from going through that process. You begin to unravel and become aware of what some of those barriers are that are saying, okay, wait, they're capable, but they're not 100% capable. We might have to hold their hand a little bit because of X, Y, and Z. Let that not be the tag that stays next to your name. Let that not be the label that stays next to how it is that you show up in the world. And if in fact you choose or will be interested, and again, having that free exploratory, breakthrough conversation chat, at least you have the blueprint on a blueprint of ideas and, awareness on what is blocking you and keeping you in handcuffs from being successfully able to kind of secure that promotion, secure that pay increase, because the bottom line is that you would like to work in your personal life and your work life where they both have balance and harmony. And the way to do that is to always be operating in your space of excellence and in your space of genius, and recognizing that everybody is not really in the compassionate space to kind of hear what some of your frustration points are. And I really want to be able to help you with that. So you see on the screen, it has the link to grab some time on my schedule. And again, thank you for joining me for another Tuesday with the morning cup of coffee or tea, gaining some leadership nuggets. So I do see that there are some, people here, and I know I've shared, for the entire time and gave some shout outs of good morning. But I want to know if there's any questions, any thoughts, any things that you want, anything that you need to expound upon that has been shared in regards to the different types of vulnerabilities and transparencies. You have a phenomenal day as well. And thank you for joining us this morning. Any questions, any thoughts of stuff that may have come up? or that you thought about that I can kind of peel back a little bit more for you so that you could be successful in your day. If you are catching this on the replay, thank you for your time. As you can see or hear, I am near an airport in the lovely island of St. Thomas. Um, Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you. That's much appreciated. I want people to level up. I want people to be able to see themselves in their giant footprint that's like standing right there, right before them. We just have to kind of unlearn and break the cycles of some things that we have definitely done on a consistent basis, and making sure that, we do what we need to do. So if you come and you catch this on the replay, do hashtag replay, say what your nuggets are, and I'll definitely come back and share some love with you. But in the meanwhile, thank you for joining the conversation this morning, and you take care.